Let's start with scandal.
Yeah, scandal, controversy.
Let's start with legal battles.
Yeah. New haircut then. I know last time you did something crazy with your hair. What was it, the Foden haircut?
Yeah, a little bit of blonde. Then
The bleach blonde.
Now I'm back with my Britney moment for this.
Yeah. And you paid for it as well. You paid for the buzz cut.
Can't put a price on perfection. I just didn't have the balls to do it myself. I would have just one slip, one mistake, and it's all over for months.
Yeah, true. But then if you've just got one single grade, surely that's... But anyway.
Hey, there's 2 grades here.
Oh, really? Oh,
Short on the side.
Oh, actually, you're right. Yeah, you do have a bit of a skin fade going on. Anyway, this isn't a barber hairdressing podcast, so we'll move on from there. But yeah, welcome back to D2C Diaries. Another solo episode today with me and Ollie. Again, loads of topics we're going to go into. Some stuff going on, in terms of kind of current affairs in marketing and business right now, as well as want to touch on some kind of Q&A bits that we've been asked around TikTok Shop, and also just kind of optimizing your creative for performance by like isolating benchmarks, which we can get into as well.
Let's start with scandal.
Yeah, scandal, controversy.
Let's start with legal battles.
Yeah. So Stephen Barlett. The Stephen Barlett, obviously,
the Stephen Barlett podcast.
Of Diary of a CEO, which coined our D2C Diaries. So obviously, is he quite a significant equity holder in both Zoe and Huel, or?
I don't know anything about the Zoe deal. I know he got, I think it was about 10% of Huel.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, so fairly.
And I don't know much about the deal. That could be wrong. That could be completely inaccurate, so don't quote me on that. But I think he got a decent chunk of Huel, and obviously has been quite involved in marketing. I think that was one of the first ones I saw him involved in from like a
I think it was
perspective.
yeah.
And then obviously he's done Zoe, he's done Perfect Ted, he's done Crafted, he's done. I feel like I'm missing something.
Obviously he's been pretty bullish on Dragon's Den in his investments as well. But yeah, I couldn't name any specific ones there. But obviously, I mean, the ASA, which is the Advertising Standards Authority, is something that I hate when I see it come up, and a lot of the time completely disagree with, some of the things that they're pulling down from an advertising perspective, because they can be extremely nitpicky at times. But they have actually banned a selection of ads from both Huel and Zoe, and reason for that was around almost kind of false or misleading information by not making it clear that Stephen Barlett had like vested interest in the business. What are your thoughts?
Especially nowadays, I think it's the whole industry has moved towards transparency from that perspective. I know Grace Beverley has had conversations around, or has had issues, or has been like accused of the same for her own brands, but I think that's very different. I think when you actually own the company, I think I think there's an argument that do you really need to fully disclose that if it's your business? I think that's very different to like being an investor and not owning the full entity, because we obviously do a lot of founder ads, etc. versus what he's doing here. But yeah, like having to like put very clearly let consumers know that you have a stake in a business, I think is probably the right thing to do if you're heavily advertising it and you're like really aggressively pushing the products over others.
I think as well, it was like I'm sure you've seen the ads, but like the way the perspective he comes from is like from the consumer, not from like from the brand side.
Yeah, it's just that it's like unauthentic as well, which is interesting. I also think like that working with so many different brands is surely starting to dilute impact as well, and this
Massively.
probably won't have a good knock-on effect to future performance of anything he's involved in. But I also think there's the other, like, to play devil's advocate, I do think he's being scapegoated probably a little bit due to who he is.
Yeah, of course.
Because there's so many other people doing it, and probably doing it in even more like cloaked, I don't know what the word is, but like even less overt ways or even more overt ways without disclosing their like involvement in businesses.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we actually got free tickets to go to a Stephen Bartlett event, and we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. So just want to preface by saying we went to it and it was actually really good.
So good, yeah.
Like really not surprised, but yeah, just huge amounts of value, because I sometimes go to these things and it's all really just a massive sales pitch to upsell you onto something else, but it was really, really valuable. So I just want to preface with that. But I think the problem I maybe have with like this whole Huel and Zoe thing is that Huel is ultra processed, they talk about nutrition, everything like that, but it's very ultra processed what it is, whether it be the shakes, the meal replacements, whatever. But I think then it completely contradicts what Zoe's whole mission is, which is whole foods, gut health. And I just feel like being so heavily involved in two brands that have very conflicting messages in that sense is dangerous as well.
Definitely. Again, it surely decays the value of the engagement for each of them if he works with both. I think just so contradictory, like you say. Huel is an incredible D2C brand, though.
Oh yeah.
Call out. It's probably I saw a financial breakdown on Twitter. Maybe we could link it below.
I remember seeing that.
Sort of breaks down the revenue growth and the rate at which they're generating free cash flow as that revenue increases, and how their EBITDA margins increasing as the top line increases, which is a really difficult thing to do, especially right now in today's landscape. And I think the way they market and the actual business itself is one of probably the hero case studies for like D2C in the UK. So yeah, can't take away from that. But I think the contradictory nature of those engagements is strange. Like, it's just a bit of common sense.
The thing with Huel is, it's not that's necessarily a bad thing. It is there for people that want a speedy replacement because they can't fit in the time to have a proper meal. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that is the solution really to the problem.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, obviously he's got a lot of other brand deals and a lot of other engagements, and that awareness is net positive for the brands that they work with. Like, the cost to generate that paid or organic would be huge, but I think like influencers that get engaged with that do engagements with brands like this, I think there's a real need to be really considered with what you put your name on, because I only think it takes 2 or 3 or one bad engagement or one poor choice to like completely destroy the trust that you have in the audience that you've tried to build for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like even regardless of whether they're the right brands for you, the right decisions, like anything more, if you're a public figure and you're heavily involved in more than 3-4 brands, it just, like you say, completely it loses that element of authenticity, because people are so accustomed to seeing you just selling all of these different products and brands. Cool. Well, one area I just wanted to get into, because it really touched my heart. I was actually on the toilet the other day, and
nice.
Toilet is, when I'm on the toilet, that's my TikTok time. I'm not allowed to go to use TikTok, obviously outside of work purposes, other than that. So I was just scrolling through TikTok, in there for a couple of minutes, and came across this video. I don't know have you heard of this channel called Kind Penguin before?
I haven't. Not until you sent me the video. No, I haven't.
And it honestly was just incredible. Like, this story is amazing. So Kind Penguin basically creates this content where he'll join Twitch streams that have no viewers, and it's kind of like, really pulls on the heartstrings, because he's just filming these Twitch streamers, and they're just sat there like quietly because no one's listening to them, but they're just kind of on their own. And then he starts speaking to them, and he follows them, and there's this one guy that he does it with, and starts asking the guy questions. The guy's like buzzing because he's got his first follower, and the guy's currently on a hike. And turns out that he was like, Kind Penguin's asking him what he does and you know what his story is almost. And he says that 3 out of his 4 grandparents had died of cancer. So he's dedicated his whole life to cancer research and cancer therapy. And, you know, has a really, really interesting kind of story around that. So they're kind of talking about this, and then so strange. He then says, but I'm on a 3-month sabbatical as we speak, which is why I'm kind of doing this Twitch stream and something I want to get into. And I'm actually releasing an independent film. And he was like, so weirdly, but the film's called My Friend the Penguin. I think that was the name of the film. So he's like, it's so weird that you've come on, someone called Kind Penguin, and we're having this discussion. You're my first follower because I'm releasing this independent film. I'm really scared that it's not going to get any views. So Kind Penguin put this whole video up on TikTok. I'll put it in the description because it's such a great video. And the guy had 65 followers on TikTok at that point. And as of today, let me just have a quick look. Probably should have done this research before, just because it's changing all of the time. As of today, he is on 1.3 million, and that video came out about 2 weeks ago.
That's so wild.
Which is absolutely crazy. And apparently his independent film is doing incredibly well. You know, the clips of it on his channel have millions of views. This video itself about you know, the Kind Penguin video has about 65 million views. And I just think, you know, it just kind of brings back this whole thing of just short form video and content, and how someone like this Kind Penguin has used this to his advantage for something good.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, because you only ever hear the negative side of you mostly hear the negative side of socials, but it's crazy that you can have that much impact through one video. I saw a similar one from this guy. I've just sent you the link to it, which is called Broxer, which is BROXH_. He was a Twitch streamer, and the same thing happened to him. Like, someone just, I can't remember if it was similar or if like a popular streamer just who was streaming on Twitch and had like hundreds of thousands of viewers was just like chatting to his audience and then just picking random streams and then sent all of his audience over, and he blew up and then ended up with like the New Zealand president visiting him. Really went super viral in the same way.
That's crazy.
So just like, yeah, so much, but like sort of short form, like that wouldn't have been possible a few years ago.
No, that's the crazy. That's why I don't want to get all motivational, but like if you have a dream or you want to do something, just posting volume and documenting what that is through socials, there's the chance that any video can blow up. And if we want to tie it back into marketing, it's like what we spoke about recently about brands are that one ad away from unlocking, you know, monumental growth for their business. It's like, call it the silver bullet creative or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about, like how it's fundamentally hard to grow a D2C brand, but it's also somewhat simple. Like, it's quite linear. If you can literally find one ad, you can get to 7 figures. I think that whole like organic like content, like we talk a lot about paid, but like that brand and that organic piece is something that I'm starting to think about a lot more in terms of like the brands that I'm working closest on. So like Thompson Car, Liquid London, Tev. It's like how like starting to carve out some budget that's invested in hero brand content. Obviously it ties back to the product, or it's related to the position that we're trying to take in the market. But I think just firmly believe that those who excel in content of any format, whether it's organic, whether it's paid, over the next few years, are going to be the ones that win. And I want to start that process sooner from an organic perspective, because we do it, but we don't carve out like big budgets to do those bigger activations. And I think like the sooner we start doing it, the quicker we'll learn what works and the faster we'll progress against like other people.
Exactly. Or even like the reverse to that is that kind of hero brand content. Or you look at someone like Foot Asylum, who have heavily invested into almost that Red Bull model where you become the media company, and almost what it is you're selling is very secondary to that. So obviously they came out with that. I think the first thing they did on their YouTube channel was that does the shoe fit. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
And they had like Chunks, Philly, all of them on there, and like that just blew up. And again, it's really the brand is it's hosted on the brand's YouTube channel, and they're wearing Foot Asylum clothing to some extent. So there's that product placement there, but other than that, it is not talked about whatsoever.
There's a couple of media companies like that there's a couple of brands like that. Like Red Bull is the obvious one you mentioned, where they're almost like they're advertising energy and like a way of life, aren't they? And that's related to the product with the extreme stunts and things that they do.
Yeah.
And they've gone so far to like football teams and everything. That's like the extreme of the extreme.
The best F1 team.
Yeah.
It's
like
crazy.
crazy. It's like just a marketing. That's marketing budget, which
Yeah.
is like crazy to think about. Obviously, they all start. So it's obviously it probably makes a lot of money in its own right, but it all ties back to that product. What's the Hot Wings series on?
Hot Wings. Oh, it's Sean. He's Sean, isn't it? Is the guy's name?
Where they get celebrities onto. I can't remember. Hot Ones. Is it Hot Ones?
Hot Ones. That's it. Yeah. So that's now like that. It started as that simple concept, but now they got a TV show and.
Yeah, well, they've got like all of. I think they're owned by BuzzFeed, if I'm right, and but they're trying to sell off, or they were trying to sell off Hot Ones because I don't know if that is the name. Yeah, it is the name, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But that's a company that like is like a front end for a business as well. Like they sell merch off the back of it. I don't feel like they were maybe revenue maximizing as much as they could, but. I think that's an opportunity, and it's something that has a massive audience that if the right operator or investor bought it, you could probably turn it into an incredibly profitable like D2C brand or product brand because it's got such strong viewership. Yeah,
exactly. Well, they've done that like at Hot Ones. Like they all of the hot sauces that they use as part of that you can buy through their website. So they've obviously got all the different Scoville, is it? Ratings. And they've obviously built a D2C brand around their hot sauces.
Does Chicken Shop Dates have anyone related to
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think so. I actually bumped into her once on the dance floor. Not bumped in like she knew who I was, but that was really random. And she's exactly how she is on the show, so it's not really a persona.
No, it's literally just a production company.
But yeah, that's so true.
It's just her company. She's got her own company. I didn't know she owned it actually. That's another one like that. Yeah. Surely I don't know how she makes revenue off that now, other than just YouTube advertising. I think there's a lot of value in YouTube as a platform for long form creative and content. I think it has to be done a lot better. It has to be really thought out. Like the Foot Asylum example and the examples we've just spoken about. If you look at the production quality of them. But I think if you do them right, it's like when everybody zigzag, like everybody's doing short form content. So there's probably a lot of opportunity if you do long form incredibly well. And something that's interesting.
How do you measure that?
I think you just have to I think the only way you could measure like impact directly from something like that is like codes. I chatted to a founder this week who does like similar approach with influencers where you kind of measure it, the direct attributed impact through like code usage, which you call out in the video, and then everything else you consider a halo effect. Yeah. So you'd try and get your CAC and your payback to come off the code, and then you just like accept that everything else is probably a nice to have, like you get the brand lift.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be treated as brand investment, and I think there's a point at which it's like, when does that become worthwhile to a brand and a business? And it's your payback period is less certain; it's going to be longer. So I think it's called carving out a budget to just do it for 6 months if you can make that happen, and just accept that it's probably going to take a while to optimize. Similar to why we're doing this podcast, I guess.
Yeah, like, exactly.
We put the money into it. We don't expect it to drive like a huge amount of short-term value, but we believe that if we're consistent with it and we optimize it, then it'll have a good impact on the business.
It's building on some of those other layers and pillars rather than just that promotion, that education, that entertainment that people are more likely to then connect to.
Yeah.
Should so do a dating show for Liquid London on YouTube.
I think that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to do a podcast, an agony aunt podcast.
Yeah.
And then maybe just, because again, I feel like podcast is the perfect starting point because it's easy to clip up. It's
fairly
cheaper than high production shoots. And I think an agony aunt podcast is a really interesting idea. Just like two people just like answering people's questions. Like you used to read them in like newspapers, magazines. Like taking that to like a TikTok and a short form content, I can imagine could do really well.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Stories that people have.
Cool. So let's get on to a little bit of Q&A then. So we've got two kind of core questions today. I think this is very fitting with obviously the recent success you've had with Liquid London on TikTok Shop. But someone has asked, how do I get my brand started on TikTok Shop?
Yeah, for context, we've had a really successful launch on TikTok Shop. I think I maybe touched on this on one of the last episodes. Like it went a bit mental for a while. We actually got banned because we went from like nothing to like 40k a day in sales over like
that's
the space
ridiculous.
Of like 2 weeks, and that was interesting because I was like, TikTok, you were kind of penalising us for being good at using the platform. Like we had a bit of a limit on stock, so our shipping times extended slightly, and they just banned us for 7. Well, the order limited us for 7 days, so we couldn't have more than 440 orders a day, which is a bit frustrating, but it's also a lot of orders. But yeah, it was an interesting process, like completely different to every other platform. The approach on there, like it's made up of obviously your shop tab, where you can go on the shop tab in TikTok. You can click through brands and you can shop direct there. Affiliates and then like paid. Like that's the three things that really drive a shop forward. I think it's like a massive opportunity for the right brands right now to get started on, because especially in the UK, because it's a lot newer. It's launching in Ireland in October as well. Affiliate is like gifting or sampling products to people who request them on TikTok. So they have an affiliate platform, they request the sample, you send it out, and then they make content, and you set a commission on those videos. So then when they make the piece of content, that obviously gets posted organically. If the video goes viral, people can directly buy the product with their discount. And we just cast a really wide net. We set a fairly high commission threshold, 30%, which works for our gross margin. Like you have to factor it in.
Yeah, that's such a big thing, isn't it, when you think about it? Because if you've got those huge margins, you can really incentivize these creators.
Having high gross margin is like such a powerful thing for platforms like that. Yeah, for that reason, like because you can set a 30% commission, for example.
Like you couldn't do that for a clothing brand.
No, and it's important in the early stages. I think you should go as aggressive as possible, because there's a thing with like attracting affiliates to work with you. You've got to consider like, yes, the commission is one thing, but the volume of sales that you're doing through shop is like a bit of like a certainty. Like if you're working with someone that's selling a shitload through TikTok Shop, then you're likely to get that as well. So like we went really aggressive. We cast a really wide net, sent out loads of samples, and one guy's video who'd made like 2 videos on TikTok, had 70 followers, drove 123k of GMV.
That's crazy. He took home, how many views did the video get?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look, but organically it like blew up, did like a huge amount of volume before we put Ben behind it. I think he's earned like 30 grand in commission off this video.
That's crazy.
And we had like loads of videos that quite a lot of videos at the same time that did the same thing. So we went mega viral through multiple different affiliate people. We took all of the Spark ads and just pushed them all into an ad set and just spent on them, and they were just getting like 6-7x return attributed.
Are you asking, like, do you have the rights to use their footage?
Yeah,
or are you
if they work
permission?
with, no, you don't have to ask permission.
Oh, interesting. Which is also a massive thing in itself. Like having you're essentially testing creative organically. If it works, you haven't paid anything for that, and then you could just run that unpaid. And as we know, organic now works so well via paid.
Yeah, all you've done is sent a product. And again, if your margins are great, gifting products isn't that expensive. So we cast a really wide net, and then we've started to learn what works, and now we're just starting to send the best videos to other people as inspo, and like, oh, here's what's worked before. Will probably help with getting success for yourself. I think it becomes a bit of like when you're starting to do a lot of volume, you start to just be like everywhere on platform. Like people are seeing loads of videos. You layer on the paid ads on top of that, and it becomes a bit of like an ecosystem, echo chamber in a way. And it's just been crazy. So we've then put the paid spend behind it. It's just skyrocketed. CPA was just so good. So just trying to feed that beast. It does require a lot of assets. So yeah, I think top tips is like go as aggressive as you can on affiliate. Once you start to get some volume, you can start bringing it down. Like you can bring that commission tier down. You don't have to keep it. You can move people into a closed group where the people who work really well for you, you can give them higher commission as a reward. Go wide on your net with affiliates, because there's I've not seen a single correlation between people who are good on like people with large followings and what works. So I think you just cast a wide net early on.
And when you say cast a wide net, are you approaching these people? Are they coming through the platform specifically, or
you start with approaching people usually? Like you have to outreach to people, but I think it's just like trial and error. And in those early stages, try and look for people who maybe like just I think have a lot of personality and like are really creative. If I was to select anything, like that's what's going to unlock probably the higher chance of getting like going viral on the organic side. And then just pull all of the Spark IDs and test them, all of them, unless there's something that comes back that doesn't align with your brand narrative. But I think it's a huge opportunity. It's crazy.
Massive.
The only downside that's coming in September is they are putting the commission, TikTok's commission on sale up from 5 to 9%.
They've just seen the money.
Seen the money signs, yeah. It's quite a lot.
That is a big
increase,
jump.
Big increase. 4%,
That's a big increase.
4% straight off your gross like revenue as well. It's quite a large increase.
I mean, from a creative perspective, taking that off their percentage probably wouldn't make a big difference from their perspective.
No,
25 versus 30 maybe, but
no, you just have to think about just have to think through that. But I think it's a really good channel for the right brands. I think I think for things like subscription brands, it is a lot more discount driven. So you really do have to consider how it sits within your brand and your channel mix and your offer. Possible downside impacts if you've a sub brand, but for most, it's doing really well. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, keep us posted.
Yeah, okay, give updates. Maybe we'll get banned again. And come back.
Yeah, I saw Connor, who's for context the founder of Liquid London and the Essence File. I saw him post on his story the other day saying like this kid made 10 grand today just from commissions, which is just
so wild,
crazy. I actually spoke to a girl who she's mother of two recently about my brand that I'm starting, but she's only got a small page, but it was about ambassador stuff, and she has a couple of thousand followers, but that is her full-time job,
just making creative,
just making organic stuff for TikTok Shop for brands, and she's making enough money off the back of that. She says she'd be making more than she ever did like in what she was doing previously, which is crazy.
Like that Chinese, not quite to the level of that Chinese guy or woman who made like an obscene amount on Black Friday through a sale on TikTok. It was some sort of social commerce site. It was like tens of millions of dollars in a day. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was crazy. But that's what it's like. Chinese social commerce is just so crazy in terms of scale.
It's never been easier, but it's also never been harder. Nice. Well, we'll go on to the second question here then. So someone asked on one of our YouTube videos, best ways to optimize your creative if your ads aren't working or if you want to push them further. Now, I think there's two sides of this. One is about if we've got really strong performing creative or creative with lots of potential, how can we go in, look at the data and know what to change about that specific creative to drive that forward? And then I guess the other side is, what would you do with a piece of creative that just isn't working? And the answer to that is scrap it and go back to the drawing board, but we can get onto that in a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to preface this with like it is a numbers game, isn't it?
Massively.
Like, you're entering the lottery with everyone, and it's about trying to use data to drive your success rate up as much as possible, but it's still probably going to be pretty low, regardless. But I think there's a lot of ways you can increase like your chances of success, like frameworks, approaches to increase your chances of success.
Exactly. It's that optimization and that learning which is really important. So what from a soft metrics perspective, we look at thumb stock ratio, click through rate, and then hold rate. Again, what's really important is setting core benchmarks for those, so you know what you're working towards and how you can deem something as good versus bad. So for thumb stock ratio, we'll look at, which is essentially the hook, how strong the hook is you want really above 25 to 30%, CTR 0.8 to 1%, and then hold rate 8 to 10%. For Meta specifically, I think for TikTok, it's slightly lower, isn't it? For CTR, like 0.6 to 0.8.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit higher in the US because your CPM will be higher. But yeah, if you're talking TikTok, generally lower because you're getting in front of a higher volume of people.
Yeah. So what we will do then when we are reviewing our creatives, it's really important to kind of holistically look at macro insights across all of the creative that you're running. But if we are looking, let's say, from the perspective of we have a creative that is working well, how can we drive that forward to continue to scale that creative and ensure that it doesn't fatigue? We're going to look at those three metrics and see where a creative sits within those benchmarks. So I might just talk about a little bit. Let's say we've got a creative that has a really strong thumb stop, but then a low CTR or a low hold rate. Like, what are some of the tricks we could do within that creative to drive that forward? I think the first thing to say is a strong TSR doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good hook. You could throw a bottle at a wall and smash a bottle, but it has no relevance to what you're doing. You've hooked them, but you're not bringing in the right audience.
Yeah, I think relevance is key. I think you should start with the hook first a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's starting with the hook, but keeping it relevant. And there's a very fine balance there. Because if you don't, you just drive terrible traffic as well.
Yeah. If you think like the creative is the targeting, so it's really important that within the first few seconds, the person scrolling knows exactly whether that video is for them or not.
And I think it's as important because that also how people start to respond to it will inform where Meta and TikTok shift budgets and what audience segments.
Yeah.
If you're getting a lot of false positives on that, it's not going to help with that either. You're going to end up shifting to an audience that maybe isn't relevant for the product.
Yeah, exactly. So like, to speak to the right audience with that hook, you're going to either talk about a pain point or a problem, agitate a pain point or problem. You're going to call out directly to a type of consumer. You're going to talk specifically about the solution, so POV as an example. There's lots of different ways you can do that, but it's really important that we do that within the first 3 seconds. But going back to what I was saying in terms of when it comes to like, if we have a video that has shown good potential from the perspective of from a CPA perspective, and has a good, say, thumb stock ratio, but we could do a lot more to drive and push that creative forward. Let's start with maybe the CTR. So one thing you can do here, if it's like below that 0.8%, is potentially bring in a second CTA early in the video, so you're giving people more opportunity to drive off platform. That could be as simple as bringing a guarantee earlier in the video if you've got some form of guarantee. We also have done some interesting tricks before where you almost create that urgency by almost taking out, we're going out of we're breaking through the fourth wall, and saying about how low in stock we are, and almost giving people those touch points to click off platform, which are really, really important. Another big one with CTR is just maybe the video is too long and we want to just cut 20% off. So, because our goal is to get to that CTA as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think the key with bringing that CTA forward in the videos, I think it's got to be a softer CTA.
Of course.
I think the other way you could, if you want to do it a little bit more aggressively, I think you could probably find a way to maybe bring a code forward and say, here's the product and I've got it with this code, before you go into, I got it for 20% off with this code, and then go into maybe the benefit and and the product's
Yeah.
solutions, etc.
I almost, another way you can do it is almost bringing that product backing or the social proof or trust building sooner as well.
Yeah.
So, if you've got 10,000 5-star reviews, bring that part of the script earlier in the video to kind of give people more of that incentive and trust as part of that. I think when it comes to that hold rate, it's we're talking about how engaging that content is and how likely we are to stay throughout that video. So it is really important that we're creating a piece of content that has strong pacing throughout that video. And again, I think I did a training session today with my editing team, we're talking about this, and obviously with the way that ads are moving now, with this very organic, almost anti-ad feeling, people think that when we talk about pacing, it's like cutting every 1 to 2 seconds and really fast pace, boom 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 onto the next thing, which in some cases is true with the right type of creative. But we can also keep that pacing strong with those more authentic, raw pieces of content as well. It's just about getting to the right checkpoints within that video quicker. And I almost call it re-hooks. So if you want to get those hold rates up, create re-hooks that happen. So if I create a piece of content for like an ad, I'm looking, if it's a 25-second video, I'm looking at in 5-second intervals, because it's almost, that's giving the user the opportunity to click off that at that point in time. So I'm almost re-hooking the audience with those moments every 5 seconds. Like, what can we do here to throw the user off to keep them engaged within that creative?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's interesting that's because at one point it was like we had to cut every 1 to 2 seconds, and it is shifted a lot. Like, I think that's why I think podcast ads are a good example of that, to be honest. I think like some of them you don't really need to cut as much. It can be like, or you can have like 2 frames and maybe the one's someone talking and then the bottom one's jumping between 2 people. We've seen a couple of concepts like that kind of perform well, because it's still got that visual engagement, but the top frame is delivering like the real narrative.
100%.
But yeah, there's loads of clever ways to break pattern interrupt in editing styles, I think, that are worth experimenting with.
Yeah, for sure. I'll put a link into a creative that is just absolutely, it's nothing fishy ad, weirdly. Who obviously Lawrence from Mothership, one of his brands, but it's just a masterclass in hitting all of these soft metrics. I didn't edit it, don't worry.
Blowing that trumpet.
But it just is, because it checks all of those boxes, and it's a piece of optimized creative that had a really strong TSR, and really was showing potential, but then was kind of maybe lacking on other elements of those soft metrics like CTR or hold rate. So if you are going in to optimize that creative, really look at how you can isolate those variables to improve them. However, now coming on to talking a little bit about when maybe it is time to go back to the drawing board and go back to some of those kind of early customer data points and things like that, and maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah, I think this is something people should do regularly. I think a lot of people don't. I don't think people do it enough. Like going right back to the start and like redoing a lot of that foundational creative strategy research, because I think as your brand develops and as even as the winning ads in your account changes, like the customer type can shift with that depending on what message is starting to work. So I think it's important to regularly go back and like resurvey your customers, look in your Facebook group if you've got one, look through like social comments, look through ad comments, ask questions on Instagram. So I use as many of these little data points to get insights into like how your customers are talking about your product, the pain points it's solving, the objections they maybe had when they came through the site, and where you are and you aren't handling them well enough. Mine your reviews not only on a general level but maybe on a product level, maybe on a monthly basis, and segment that out as much as you can, and sort of just pull that data together on I think quarterly at least. Like it's a good time to do it now as you're going into like Black Friday peak periods. I also think for some brands the message, like that data will probably shift as the year progresses as well. Like gifting's a good example of that. Like a lot of the brands that in Jack Group, like fragrance is a niche that is so gifting orientated in Q4, but is very, but Q1 to 3 is very driven by like people purchasing for themselves, and I think that's a good example of like why it's important to regularly review like your foundational qualitative data and start that process again, and rebuild those sort of personas, rebuild those messaging frameworks based on what you find through those that data mining.
Yeah, 100%. So important. I think you see a lot of the time, like founders sometimes becoming disassociated or disconnected from who their customers actually are.
Yeah.
So it's so important to do that in many ways.
I think that what we didn't do this last year, but I definitely would this year, is like end of Q4 like we always do a bit of a Q4 recap, what went wrong, well, what went badly, and it's really useful just to pull that document up and look at it in now, this time of the year, to be like, right, we made that mistake, we weren't organized enough there, we could have drove more value there. I also think you could, like, end of December, when like Q5 period, when people are like at home a lot on phones, like send out surveys, cohort that group of customers, because they will behave completely differently.
Yeah.
And you might not use that data for January, Feb, but you probably will if you just put it in a folder and look at it in like August and use it to drive like your strategy again through October, November, December.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really interesting. I definitely going to do that. I didn't do it last year. So
It's a great idea. God, getting all giddy now. It's almost that time of year.
When everything becomes really easy, well, to a degree, it becomes easier.
Yeah. God, me and Liv actually this morning, because obviously we're building that massive Black Friday guide. Stay tuned at Hambi and Soar. We're building this behemoth Black Friday guide for D2C brands on performance and creative. But we were actually going through reviewing a load of the TEV best performers from the Black Friday period, the Essence Vault that is, and there was some disgusting statistics.
Yeah.
Some of the results are disgusting.
Yeah, just pulling some big numbers, some big ROAS.
Yeah, and some of it was just simple, like that creative, which was, and everyone should do this because it's just so low effort, high impact. It's just that text message.
Yeah,
it was like it was someone took a picture of someone else's phone and it was like saying like, oh my god, Teva doing buy one get native. 1 free or something like that, just very native.
I think to wrap up, I think like that in terms of, if I was to advise brands around like Black Friday creative output from like a top level strategic resource allocation, most of what I see work through that period is statics. I think investing a lot of your video output, pivoting a lot of your video output towards like the actual sale event. If you're not running something for like 2 weeks, if you've got a really condensed window of 5, 6, 7 days, I think it's a complete waste of money. I think you're better allocating that to maybe lead gen, warm up campaigns, or just like gifting in general, and because it just never performs well. The way you can do it is maybe change the hooks to the offer of previous winning assets and launch, because it's just like thinking pragmatically through like that creative cost money to produce, like where is it best allocated. And I think video is usually not that impactful for Black Friday specifically.
I've done a bit of an analysis recently of exactly that, like looking at why that might be. And one thing is because, you know, now that we're looking at pieces of creative and identifying where it sits within the performance funnel, you know, we would always tell brands, okay, take your best performers, and let's kind of respin them in the form of, utilizing an offer within the hook. Which is still 100% true, but I think there's almost this clash where you've got a 35-second piece of UGC, you just slap a offer hook at it before it, but then it goes straight into a problem-aware ad, which I think what you need to do is, if you're going to do that, you need to make that ad either, once we get past that hook, either product-aware or most-aware, so we're just tackling, social proof, PR, objections, and we're getting to that CTA much quicker. Like, I've seen a lot more success with those Black Friday ads that are under 15 seconds, and they're much more direct response, because if you just put a hook in front of a problem aware ad that sits higher up in that funnel, then you're going to get drop off.
100%. I think that's key. Yeah,
nice.
Key to not just sort of what's it called, like force creative into that framework for that period.
Yeah, well, we are going to do like a whole episode dedicated to Black Friday, probably in the next kind of 3 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. We should needs to be sooner rather than later, really, to have enough time for planning. But
100%.
we've obviously been in huge amounts of work here. I think across our agencies, we'd started planning for this probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago anyway. So huge amounts of value that we can add there, and we're going to do a whole episode going deep into Black Friday strategy.
Yep, excited.
Nice.
Excited. It's a good time of year.
Yeah, that's it. Cool. Well, yeah, good fun episode today. We better end now because I think we've both got meetings to get into.
Yep. Just looking at the clock.
Yeah. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, obviously we're on YouTube and Spotify at D2C Diaries. Obviously, please do the bell icon on Spotify because it really, really helps. And obviously, leave any comments because we are here to answer any questions you might have about e-commerce, whatever it might be. But yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.
Give us a 5-star.
Shit, I missed one.